Hello, Brent Butt here. Welcome to ShowbizMonkeys.com.
Around this town, I'm alright. Around this town, I'm alright. I mean, no consequence when you playing with the fire.
So glad to be able to talk to you. We have a number of mutual friends, but I've never met you before. So yeah, it's great to meet you.
I have no friends, so I don't know how that could be possible.
Well, I'm in Winnipeg, so by default, the prairies alone.
Yeah, that's right.
There's some friendship there, but I know Taz and
Oh, yes.
Paul Roblowskis, who I want to talk to you about in a little bit later on in the
Sure.
interview. But yeah, the first thing I would like to do is kind of go back to the beginning, because you were a working stand-up comic in the late 80s through the 90s, and being a fan of comedy and knowing a lot of comedians myself, I know that that is an interesting thing to be in Canada around those years, doing touring across the country, road trips, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that early start in your comedy career and just trying to get out there to as many people as possible?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a small farming town in Saskatchewan, a little town called Tisdale. And for whatever reason, I knew early on, like the first time I ever saw a comedian was on an afternoon talk show. And I'd never seen that before, just a guy talking and being funny. And it just clicked with me. It was like an epiphany moment. It was like, well, this is what I should be trying to do. It's what I always try and do with my friends. This is the only thing that makes sense to me outside being an NHL goalie, and I'm not good enough at playing hockey to be an NHL goalie. So it became, my principal focus in life from the age of 12. And I started kind of trying to write bits and fashion a bit of a stand-up thing. If I was going to be a stand-up, what would it be like? And then in high school, I tried it. Like at a variety night, and it went really well. And they asked me back the next year for the drama night, and so I did. I did it again there, and it went well enough that I was encouraged that okay, maybe I will be able to do this. And when I moved from Tisdale to Saskatoon to pursue an endeavor with a friend of mine. We were publishing a comic book, and there was a club in Saskatoon that had amateur night, and so I called down and went down first Thursday in February of 1988. That was when I first set foot in a club, and it's been doing that ever since. But it was like I said, late 80s, so it was a real boom. It was a real boom time, and anybody who even claimed to be a comedian could get a little bit of work.
That's
and
right.
So I came along at a good time.
And then there was the boom, and then there was a bit of a bust in the mid to late 90s there.
Culling.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, the people who just made claims weren't getting the work anymore, but the people that actually had the material and had the audience and all
And it was
that.
also the people who were in it for the right reasons stuck around.
Right, yeah.
Like the people that left were people who were like, oh, we're not going to make that much money anymore. We're not going to bother. That's kind of what it seemed like. And the people who stuck around were the right people, the people who didn't have a choice, people who were like, I'm doing this regardless. If I have to work another job, I'm still going to come every night and do my 7 minutes somewhere. And so the result was sort of like, I think comedy took a good step forward artistically during that time, during that culling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess a couple of years ago, you wrote this novel that kind of brings on some of those experiences. Obviously, not exactly. I would hope not exactly.
Yeah, not exactly.
This horror novel called Huge.
Yeah, but on the road during that time, like I had moved to Toronto, and I was touring a lot of Southern Ontario. Driving around rural Ontario countryside, going from small city to big town to small city, and when you first start out in comedy, you don't get to choose who you work with. So oftentimes, 99 times out of 100, you get saddled with somebody, you meet them for the first time, and it's great. You become friends, and you get along great and have some laughs. But every now and then, you get assigned to do a show or a run of shows with somebody that you don't know, And as you know, that first day you start driving and you're listening to this person talk and you start to get their thoughts on things and you start to realize, okay, this guy's unhinged and potentially dangerous. And you're looking around the vast Canadian countryside and you always think, boy, there's a lot of places to hide my body if this doesn't go well. And it was just that sort, but at the same time, you're sort of dependent upon this person that you can't bring yourself to trust.
Yeah.
And I always thought that would make a good story. I was always squirreling away story ideas. And I thought that scenario, the comedian on the road in the vast Canadian, vast open Canadian countryside with somebody that they're beginning to think more and more is dangerous. I always felt that was a good idea for a story. So when I sat down to write a novel for the first time, that was the story that I decided to hammer out.
Maybe, yeah, maybe a little bit too dark for a 22-minute sitcom
Yeah,
episode storyline.
definitely not a sitcom. Definitely surprise some people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But wow, you got so much. I remember just, yeah, I know this is a couple of years ago now, but being on social media and seeing the amount of praise, not just across the country in Canada, but the amount of praise from comics in the US uh, about the novel and saying that it, hit close to home in certain ways, but was so well done.
Yeah, it was really surprising because part of me, especially with like the press, I kind of thought the press might give me a hard time because it's like, why does, dopey TV joke boy think he can write a dark psychological thriller? So I was sort of bracing myself for that, but the response from the media was really, really good. And like you said, yeah, some like notable comics mentioned it on social media, and yeah, it was the number one national bestseller.
Yeah, that kind of draws me into my next question, which is you've amassed this wonderful career in Canada from, so many years of stand-up going right into Corner Gas, which is, as you know, I'm not telling you anything new. It's, one of the most beloved Canadian television shows of all time. And then post that, you've done so much touring and continued stand-up work. But you're probably one of the most well-known Canadian acts that doesn't have that international career.
Right.
And I kind of I was thinking you're the Tragically Hip of comedy, which is a pretty good
Put that on a t-shirt.
group to be in.
I'll take
Uh,
that. I wish that were true somehow. I'll take
it
it.
is true.
I'm not going to squawk.
I'll make the shirt. I'll slip the proceeds your way. But yeah, how has it felt? Like it is we talk about the Canadian entertainment industry and the star system not really being there for most people. A lot of Canadians do have to go to the States to be able to get work, to be able to take that next step. But how has it been for you to be able to stay in this country and be a working comic and stay in the business and make a living out of it?
I mean, it's worked out great. I initially like early 90s, 93, I think, I left Toronto to go to LA because that was the idea was
Yeah.
that's the next step, right? And but I don't think my heart was really in it. But I went down there, and my girlfriend at the time was a dual citizen. We moved to LA, and but I didn't have the paperwork to work
Mhm.
legally down there. So I kicked around for a bit. I'd come back up and do my work here in Canada and spend my off time down in LA. And I had some interest from managers and things like that, and I was sort of on the right track, kind of. But I never felt super comfortable. I never felt like my comedy was clicking. Like it always seemed to me like I could do well at a club as long as I wasn't being myself. If I put on sort of
Mm.
that mask of like the standard Southern California comedian, I could play that game and it would go well. The material would work. But I felt like it wasn't coming from me and it was never really that fun. And for me, stand up had always been super fun. So I was in a bit of a quandary internally when I had to make the decision about are you going to actually pursue getting the paperwork and everything down in LA. And I was up in Vancouver at the time. I was actually unable to go back down without the paperwork. And I'd come up to Vancouver to do I think a TV thing, and then I was booked to do a bunch of stand up in BC, like in Vancouver and over in the island and up in the Okanagan and stuff. And I thought, while I'm in this transitional moment, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to hang out here in Vancouver for a couple of months, 3, 4 months maybe. I know some buddies here. I never spend any time here. It seems like such a nice city. I always fly in and fly out, never get to actually know it. So I'm going to stick around here. I thought maybe 3 months. And I got an apartment in the West End that you could rent month by month. You didn't have to sign a lease. And I was in that apartment for 10 years. I never, I just never felt like I needed to be anywhere else or wanted to be anywhere else. And also, it sort of clicked because aside from the fact that I could, I was doing a lot of stand up. I was playing every weekend, playing clubs and stuff. So I was doing okay stand up wise and a lot of corporate shows. But one of the LA managers, there was a Vancouver based TV producer named Michael French who would always call down to this LA manager, Jimmy Miller, and say to him, get him to book talent for whatever TV project he was doing. Usually get somebody to write. I need a funny guy to write on this thing. And so he called Jimmy Miller. He said, I'm trying to put the show together. I need a funny guy. Who should I hire? And Jimmy said to him, well, funnily enough, a really funny guy who is a Canadian is in your backyard right now. He just landed in Vancouver. He's been down here in LA for like 6 months, but here's his number. Give him a call. So I met with this guy, Michael French, and he hired me to write the script. He liked it. The show did well. And right away, he hired me to do another one. And he gave me a producer credit on it. And he was the guy, he was a real mentor for me. He was incredibly patient, let me pick his brain about producing, and I learned how to edit and all that stuff working through him. So by the time the opportunity for Corner Gas came along, I kind of knew some of the background of how to put a TV show together. I didn't know a lot
Yeah.
about half hour narrative script writing, but I knew that I could make something funnier by editing it. I knew what we needed shot wise. I knew those kind of things. So I was more prepared for when Corner Gas came along.
But I'm sure you had some of that, just that editing mindset, even from stand up. You need to, like, the best stand up is tighten and tighten and tighten until you get to the core of the joke and the punchline.
Yeah. And sometimes the thing is, sometimes people who aren't in the comedy business, people who aren't crafting and living comedy, they don't understand what gets in the way. I learned that that's the big problem. The big difference between a comedian and a non-comedian is a comedian has the ability to see and anticipate what is going to get in the way between the setup and the punchline. What's going to kneecap this joke and mitigate that or bypass it or get rid of it. Most non-comedians don't have that sense. They don't have a sense of, well, that this is going to be in the way and you have to cut around that. Or they don't have a sense of, well, you can't have the two shot before the single because we shouldn't really know that that person's there until, so that the comedic sensibility is there, but then the actual hands-on machinations of scrubbing through footage
Right,
and
like
finding out what
physically
you
doing
can
it.
do,
Yeah.
Even though I kind of learned pre-digital, all the same things apply, even though the gear changes.
So you're still in Vancouver, right? Is that
Yeah, this
correct?
is still home.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever live anywhere else. I like to travel. I like to see some of the world,
Yeah.
but my wife and I, we pop off and go to different countries and stuff like that for kicks, but Vancouver's home.
So this JFL Vancouver show, that is the reason we're talking right now, is a hometown gig. It's, right in your
Yeah.
backyard.
And it's fun because I don't often do big ticketed shows here in Vancouver where I live. I
Hmm.
often pop down to a club or a comedy night somewhere, pop on stage, work on a new 10 minutes or something like that. But that's always unannounced. And it's always like a little fun, low key thing at a place where people have paid $5 to get in and there's, 19 people in the crowd. That's mostly what I do in Vancouver. And then my actual shows are all on the road. But every now and then, I think the last time I did a big public ticketed show in Vancouver proper was at the Vogue Theater in 2014, just before my
Okay.
movie No Clue came out. I did a tour called Almost a Movie Star Tour in support of my movie and did a bunch of stand-up nights. And I did the Vogue Theater in Vancouver, and I think that was the last time I've done a big ticketed show at a theater in my home, in my town.
That's 12 years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
So is there a level of excitement? I mean, obviously, like you said, you pop down and do small shows, so it's not like you're not seeing people in the community and that sort of thing, but the excitement of doing this big show for you know, a full crowd.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's always a little nerve-wracking too when you're right in your backyard, because you're like, man, if I tank, I'm going to see this guy at the grocery store next week.
Yeah.
It's always different in your hometown, but yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. And, I'll be able to do some local stuff that you can't do anywhere else.
Right. Yeah.
That's
And
always
and
fun.
it's unlike, the focus of a lot of the other Just for Laughs, definitely Montreal, Toronto to a certain extent as well, are the TV thing. We obviously have that
Yeah.
here with the Winnipeg Comedy Festival as well. It's very, much focused on the TV galas, but the Vancouver shows for the most part, I know they do a little bit of TV stuff and smaller shows, but it's just about the show and being in the room and
Yeah. It's about the
uh
live events, the live shows. It's
yeah.
about the crowd being there and the performers being on the stage in front of them. And that is really what it's about. And it's very cool. And like the Vancouver chapter of Just for Laughs hasn't been around as long, and it'll probably
Mhm.
get to where it's doing, big TV stuff as well. But for right now, it's just like a bunch of really like big, cool theater, big venue shows, but all just live. And that makes it very exciting and fun.
Is there anyone, I don't know at this stage in your career if you actively choose to go see a lot of comedy, but is there anyone that's on the JFL Vancouver bill that you're looking forward to either seeing perform or just excited to see because they're in town and you know them?
Um, well, I know Zach Galifianakis a little bit. He used to just hang around Vancouver and do stand up. He was coming to our shows all the time when I ran the Urban Well, doing a Tuesday night comedy show, and it was just announced that he's being interviewed on stage by Letterman. Letterman
Mhm.
hasn't done a show in Canada in 40 years or something like that. And so I'm excited about that. I'm going to go to that and maybe get to see Zach backstage. I don't know. Um, yeah, and Joe List is coming to town. He's a really funny guy that I have met before. I wouldn't say that I know him well, but I've met him before, and a really funny guy. Yeah, there's a lot of good acts here. I'm in and out of town though throughout it too, because I
Oh,
still,
okay.
I'm going on the road doing shows.
Yeah, I'm here in Winnipeg, so I'm not going to be able to see any of these shows. There was a chance it was gonna just coincidentally work out and overlap, but it's not. But looking at that lineup, it's just it's a pretty fun lineup.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of really good shows.
I mentioned at the very beginning, I mentioned the name Paul Roblowskis. I do want to ask you about your experience doing a guest spot on the show Acting Good, CTV
Yeah.
Comedy, and Crave and APTN show. You don't do a ton of acting spots these days. Corner Gas was such an iconic thing, and obviously the animated Corner Gas ran for a number of years as well. But how was it kind of jumping back into the sitcom shoes for an
Yeah, it was
episode?
it was fun to do, and mainly I agreed to do it just because I thought it was a really funny bit. Like, they had me playing a Lou Diamond Phillips
Yeah.
impersonator, and to me, I heard the idea and I liked the idea, and then I read the scenes, and he's kind of a jerky guy, he's just kind of full of himself, and it seemed to me like this would be a really fun part to play, and it was a funny, they were funny scenes. And that's all I'm looking for. I just want something fun to play where the comedy is good. And so this just, it hit both of those. So I said, yeah, sign me up.
And yeah, Acting Good has gotten comparisons to Corner Gas as like kind of the indigenous version, the res version, that sort of thing. So it has some of those like silly regular life that mentality about it.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think they say fuck more than we ever did.
yeah, you can
That
get
would be one of the
the
big differences.
that's true. I think in general, yeah, it is very interesting just to think like Corner Gas wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things. But
But it was also, prime time broadcast. That was
yeah,
different than streaming, you know? It was just
But
different
but the
different rules.
but the biggest shows in the world now aren't necessarily the primetime broadcast shows. They're these, you
Yeah.
know, high-end cable shows, and that's what everyone's watching, and it's filled with all these things that, just thinking about 20 years ago, the biggest shows in the world would never be able to throw that word in there or have that kind of scene. Or
Yeah.
this is
The
very interesting.
Sopranos really changed everything, man.
Yeah,
The Sopranos just rewrote the rules.
it's true. Yeah. Like I said, I'm sad that I won't be able to be there in person to see
How
this
do you think we
show.
all feel?
You were
The whole
waiting.
city's heartbroken, for
My
God's
sister's
sakes.
there. I'm hoping she can go out to some of these JFL Vancouver shows. I sent her the schedule. But yeah, anyone who's listening or watching this should definitely head down to see Brent and any of the other great shows as part of the festival. And for anyone not in Vancouver, do you have any other gigs coming up outside of your hometown?
Yeah, always do. You know, the best thing to do is just go to my website, brentbutt.com. I have a website that's on the internet, and brentbutt.com. And yeah, all the live shows are booked there. Or you can follow me on, Instagram. I'm always yapping about where I'm going to be.